what you will hear today are not just project updates. These are stories of innovation, collaboration, and courage. Stories where challenges became opportunities and ideas evolve into real change for learners. As you see, we have a packed agenda. We'll start with the welcome, then opening remarks. We have also some reflections from our colleagues from Center for Accessibility. We have divided our fellows presentation into 3 parts. And after each part, we have about 5 to 10 minutes for questions. We have our wonderful students here to present and share their stories. And also we have at about 12:10 a lunch break. And then closing remarks. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that Vancouver campus of UBC is located on unceded ancestral traditional territory of Musqueam people who have cared for this land for countless generations. As we celebrate today, let's hold the space for the responsibility this carries to embed equity, inclusion, and accessibility in all we do. Universal design for learning invites us to anticipate diversity, design with flexibility, and remove barriers before they arise. Everything we share today reflects those values and remind us that inclusive change is built together. It's now my pleasure to welcome Dr. Simon Bates, Vice Provost and Associate Vice President, Teaching and Learning. Simon has championed inclusive education across UBC and played a key role, I emphasize a key role, in making the UDL Fellow program possible. His leadership has ensured that innovation and equity go hand in hand. Simon, we are grateful for your vision and commitment. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to everyone online. Can't see your faces, but I can see your messages in the chat. And good morning to everyone in the room with me today. I want to just take a couple of minutes to talk about why this matters. All of you know why this matters, but I want to link it to why this matters to us as a university, our values, and our strategic commitments. So the first thing I want to do is I want to link how UDL shows up within UBC's strategic priorities. Many of you, I'm sure, over the last 12 months, it will not have escaped you that the president has been leading a refresh of the strategic plan. One of the things he's been at pains to point out is we do not turn our back on the strategic plan that was formulated in 2016-17. And that strategic plan, UBC's Next Century, highlights inclusive excellence as one of the 20 strategies. And I'm just going to quote from that. Thank you. It commits us to reviewing and revising policies, practices, and services to reflect our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, with an emphasis on supporting communities and access. Simultaneously in that plan, UBC calls for broad-based innovation, embracing creativity, risk-taking. Afsani mentioned courage in her remarks. Risk-taking requires courage. Digital inclusion and meaningful transformation in education. And UDL, I think, exemplifies both of these, a commitment to inclusive excellence and to broad-based innovation, because it's a pedagogical innovation grounded in flexibility and accessibility, and it really embodies those two goals of inclusive excellence and innovation in teaching, learning, and support for our students. And I think it's gone beyond the point, reflecting where this program has got to. It's gone beyond the point now where it's not just a commendable thing for us to be thinking about or a nice to have. It's an ethical responsibility. It shifts the onus from students having to navigate barriers to us proactively designing learning experiences that are accessible to every learner. So choosing an approach founded in UDL signals we regard equitable access as not a nice to have, but a core obligation of the way we approach our academic activities. I want to say a little bit about the role that UDL Fellows, partners, supporters, and students working in this area, much more than participants in a cohort. You are champions for this and you are catalysts. I promised Christina I would not take her remarks about partnership, collaboration. She'll talk about that in a moment. But weaving accessibility into multiple learning contexts and the work that all of you are engaged in, the UDL Hub, case studies, workshops, community conversations, spreads the impact of this approach to inclusive design across the campus. You all know this, you felt it through this journey. It's a collective endeavor. And I would say every instructor, designer, staff member, TA, student can be a leader in creating access and equity. By applying and championing UDL, even in what might feel like small steps, we're together shaping a learning environment where diversity enriches experience. So your leadership and advocacy in the classroom, in every design meeting, in the conversations you have as part of this cohort and beyond really matters. The last bullet point on the slide, you've probably noticed and has stolen my big reveal. We are going to fund a fourth UDL Fellows cohort. Jeff, I have to say, Jeff and Afsane sent me this impassioned email where it was very, very clear they were cognizant of some of the fiscal challenges around the university, as all of you no doubt are. But this is so easy for me to support. Not only do I believe in its importance, I see its impact, I see the momentum that all of you and the cohorts that have come before you have built. And it's a real pleasure to be able to support that and keep it going. So, having hopefully not taken too much of Christina's speaking remarks, I'll hand back to Afsane to introduce her.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Simon. A powerful reminder that leadership is about creating the space and condition for inclusive ideas to take root. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Christina Hendricks, Academic Director at CTLT. Christina is a tireless advocate for accessibility, open education, and inclusive teaching practices. Her leadership has fostered collaboration across faculties and units, and ensuring that accessibility is not a silo effort, but a shared responsibility. Christina, over to you.
Thank you, Afsane. Yeah, so I will echo a little bit of what Simon said, but that's because it's so important. So I want to start off by thanking all of you, all the work you've undertaken over the past few months, and for some of you who've been working in this space for quite some time, right? It's just an incredible thing to be able to see how many people have prioritized this work. You've put in a lot of time, you've put in a lot of effort to learn, to collaborate together, to design and redesign courses, learning activities, digital resources, and much more. And I know from experience that when you might first be starting off thinking about accessibility and universal design for learning, it might feel like a fairly heavy lift to sort of learn everything and to change things as needed. But at least for me, over time, it starts to become just part of what you do on a regular basis. And for me, it just is, I notice all of the time, oh, there's no headings on that Word document, right? For example, or I need to describe the visuals on my slides when I'm giving a presentation. Because these things it just starts to become part of what shows up in your brain over time. So many of you who might have been new to this work have taken great steps to move towards that point. And so I just wanted to say thank you to begin with. Thank you and acknowledgement for all of the work that the students have done in this program, the faculty, the staff. And I'll say a little bit more next about our cross-campus collaboration and partnerships. So I think I may have seen many of you at our kickoff event where I emphasized that one of the things I love about this program, among many other things, is the deep level of collaboration that occurs in the program. It works because so many people have come together in partnership. So we've got many different roles. We've got, as I mentioned before, students. We've got staff from multiple units. We have faculty members all working together. This is critical. This is how this work happens, right? It's not just the role of one kind of position, but it really makes a difference when we all come together. And then, of course, there's so many different units and faculties coming together. So some folks from the Center for Teaching, Learning, Technology, folks from different faculty support units, from Vantage College, UBC Studios, the Center of Accessibility, who you'll hear from next, and others I'm probably forgetting. So it's just such a wonderful model for how we can work together across the institution on really important institutional initiatives and priorities such as this. I'd love to see more such collaboration in various areas that we need to make change in the institution, because I've just seen how well it works in this program. So thank you for prioritizing this crucial work, and thank you for your collaborations across various units and roles. And the last thing I'll mention is kind of similar to some of what Simon had to say around how critical it is for this work to be happening. Because of your work in this program, I also think of you all as champions. Champions in the sense of people who champion accessibility and universal design for learning in many aspects of your work, no matter what your role is. And as part of this, I hope, and I'm sure many of us hope, that you will continue to bring this work, what you've learned, what you've changed, the processes you've learned about and implemented into other aspects of your role, into talking with other people. If you're a faculty member, sharing it with other colleagues, maybe at a department meeting. If you're a student, talking with other students about what you've learned and what you know, bringing it into your academic work. If you're support staff, bringing all of this to many ways in which you support faculty, students, and staff at the institution, right? So once this starts to become something that we all just bring into our work every day, the more it will eventually spread, right? It may take a little while, but we will certainly get there. As Simon already mentioned, this work is absolutely crucial. It is not optional. We cannot have effective teaching and learning. We cannot have excellent teaching and learning. We cannot have excellent work generally if it is not also accessible. And the work that folks are doing in UDL helps to make that happen in a broad way, to invite many people to be able to participate in their work, in their academics, in research, in all aspects of what we do. This is not to say every individual has to do everything all at once, because I'm sure, as you've learned over the course of the past few months, there's a lot to do, right? So small steps, medium steps, as long as we keep moving forward, that's all really, really important. We have a big lift to enact change across UBC. We're going to have to work together. We already did in this cohort. And I'm excited to see that the collective efforts here will continue outward into your future endeavors. So thank you for all that you've done so far. Thank you for taking the time to prioritize this work. And thank you for what I know you will continue to do in the future. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Christina. So next is our wonderful colleagues and partners from Center for Accessibility. We will hear from two key partners. First, Wendy Norman, Director of Center for Accessibility and a strong advocate for UDL at UBC, whose leadership has helped ensure that accessibility is woven into institutional practices. And joining Wendy is AC Digger, Accessibility Advisor from Center for Accessibility, who has been managing our student consultants. AC has played an important role in connecting student voices with the work of our UDL Fellows, ensuring that lived experiences guides design.
Thank you so much. I'm Wendy, by the way, and it is so incredibly heartening to be here. Our team at the CFA is a group of people who, in some regards, wishes they didn't have to exist as a unit. We are on the front lines on a daily basis of working with students with disabilities. But they aren't just students with disabilities. They're students with disabilities who are also parents, who may be dealing with being a caregiver for aging family members. They are representing a range of identities about who they are. And we are tasked with trying to extract disability from their identity and direct the institution to meet its basic legal obligations to these learners. The amount of work that generates for our team, the amount of time when we encounter resistance, the number of hoops that these students have to jump through is actually quite mind-boggling. And what you are doing here by engaging in this process is you're going beyond. You're going beyond our basic. We are here to do that battle. What you're doing is going further. You're saying, how can we be excellent? How can we be better? How can we create an excellent student experience for students? And, you know, we know and see how historically universities have privileged particular types of brains and particular types of bodies. And we see how over the years policies and practices have been built to reinforce that and exclude people who don't meet that very narrow definition of what it looks like to be a learner. We agree wholeheartedly with this initiative, and echoing what both Simon and Christina has said, we see this as that the university to survive will need to evolve. Over 11% of UBC's student population is registered with our center. When you look to other institutions in Canada, you see that number climbing to 20, 30. In the Maritimes, on average, it's 33%, which would perhaps suggest that we need to stop making individual exceptions and start looking at redefining the rules or the systemic environment in which we're thinking about teaching and learning. So I just simply want to say that thank you. You are now the choir. We need people like you to be singing and to understand how innovative it is to be taking this approach and taking the time. And as Christina said, we also can see how much time it saves in the long run, how much work it saves in the long run. And when we're engaged every day in a space of tension on campus, it is just so incredibly rewarding and, again, heartening to see this level of systemic work happening. So we are grateful to the CTLT and to have been involved and engaged in this process. We are always available as a resource for particular student situations or cases. If you're feeling stuck or challenged, we encourage you to reach out to our team as well at any time. So I think that's it for me, and thank you very much.
And just to follow along with Wendy here, I am the person you can reach out to if you have any questions, so please email me. Just kind of building on what we've been discussing so far, I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone in this room, student facilitators, faculty, staff, everyone who's engaged together, all these instructional teams from across campus, because as Wendy says, the need we have keeps growing. Not to continue harping on the struggles of timed assessments for students, but I think if you cast your minds back to April and May when we were beginning this, we were sharing with you that data that we have about accommodated exam requests increasing by up to like 5,000 requests per academic year when it comes to the growth that we've experienced. So in 2023, we had about 31,000 exams our team facilitated. That's continued to grow. We physically don't have the space, despite having a lovely new building, to hold all of the students who need that level of support. So the fact that you are working to build a more equitable, accessible assessment environment and learning environment for these students is so appreciated. The fact that everyone's been working so hard to design for flexibility within their own particular project has been fantastic. I've heard so many great conversations throughout the course of these 8 to 10 weeks, I think it's been, reevaluating and reimagining different ways of assessing what students are learning, if students are getting what they need from the course to continue and succeed. For example, the Psych 218 team, who has kind of taken the opportunity to really figure out if their current system is working for students and how they can make it better, discovering new tools and creative approaches, working together. I've heard so many great conversations where folks have figured out different ways to use AI tools and improve the accessibility of their coursework while figuring out ways to make that like not too burdensome, not too much workload for themselves. Creative approaches that really help people kind of change the way they've been teaching in small ways that still have the outcomes that are desired without necessarily having those barriers in place for students to kind of not earn our keep exactly as a UDL program. I would like to reassure Simon by saying, though, it is, a considerable expense to make a program like this happen. When you look at the amount of work that our team often has to do in order to make coursework accessible for perhaps just 1 or 2 students, the amount of budget and time and effort that takes is not small. But even worse, the students who are needing that support have to wait until we can actually get the formatting done, until we can get the assistance that they need in place. So the fact that you are all proactively taking this time to make sure that more students from the very start can access your course materials is very, very welcome. So we really appreciate that work on your behalf. So I won't want to take up too much of your time. I just do want to thank you all for participating, and we're not done, even though this is kind of a celebratory event. So if you're still implementing your projects, if you bring your projects to your students and you find you're getting some feedback, if you have some questions that linger, don't hesitate to email me. I'm here. I would love to help you make your coursework accessible now so that we don't have to try and get it accessible for your students after the classes already start. And so you don't have the stress and strain of figuring out concessions, make up assignments, ways to support your students after the fact. So we're here for you. Don't hesitate to get in touch. And I'm excited to hear everyone presenting on what they've decided they're going to give our students, because we can't wait. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Wendy and AC. Now we are getting to the fun part. So for today, we have 13 teams plus a student presentation. Each team will have 5 minutes to talk about. I already sent you all some questions that as a guiding question, but you all decided developing PowerPoint or any formats that you would like to share some of the lessons learned, some of the strategy. I know some of you are going to implement the projects. in September, some in January. So some of you already done the redesign, some of you are still planning. This is where you will share your stories, your challenges, the strategies that you have used, what you have learned, and what you expect from students. With that, this is the order of our presentation. We will have two presenters joining us online. And after the first five, we will have a break. We will have about 10 minutes question and answer, and then we'll take a break, and then we continue. We have Angela Lamb sitting there with her 1 minute warning. So that keep us all on track, although we are actually surprisingly 10 minutes ahead of time, so which is good. So with that, now I am actually pleased to introduce Emily Renault, who will be guiding us through the team presentation today. Emily will invite each group to present, keeping us on track and ensuring we hear from all of our fellows. Emily, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Emily with the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Technology. So I'll be walking us through. We have 3 blocks of presentations over the next couple of hours. So we get to see, this is the big reveal, all your hard work. Super excited to see everything. So our first group is the Allard School of Law. We have Karen Mickelson and Mio Tomisawa.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mio Tomisawa, and I am the Senior Manager of the EDI office at Allard. This is a new office that was created around this time last year, and my role kind of pertains to looking at structural or educational programming for the law school in regards to equity, diversity, and inclusion.
And I'm Karen Mickelson, a longstanding member of faculty. And I think we'd both like to thank everyone. We'd probably take 3 of our 5 minutes doing that if we said everything we have to say. But thank you to the UDL program and our peers. So I'm going to speak about the challenges and barriers that we were wanting to focus on here. And we had a number of them, but for today, we're going to focus on the idea of dealing with difficult, sensitive, and potentially triggering material. Again, I spoke at this at our kickoff event. Many law courses involve this, but my course involves particularly difficult material. And so we wanted to think about that, and also teaching to instill hope or at least avoid generating despair. And we had other things that we wanted to look at that we're going to continue to work on. So the UDL strategies that we tried, one thing is trying to address well-being explicitly in the course, especially in the introduction and the syllabus. And to give you an idea, we had my old syllabus on the left, and it's very, clear and tuckety-tuckety-tuck approach to this. And on the right, what we have now is, and this is a draft version, so we welcome feedback, but starting with the idea that creating an inclusive and supportive learning environment is a shared priority across the law school community. The course has been designed with the goal of reducing barriers to participation. I welcome feedback on how to make it more accessible. And then I talk about the law school's approach to accommodation and concessions and why we do it. Before I just said it's centralized, kind of deal with it. Whereas now it's like, this is why we do it. It's for students' benefit, not for the convenience of instructors. So this was our attempt to kind of shift the focus towards the learners.
Another key part of kind of the work that we wanted to do was also, again, addressing well-being a little bit more intentionally and explicitly in the syllabus and the introduction to the course. As Karen kind of introduced, a lot of the law courses deal with these sensitive materials, partially in fact of a need to study these materials to become a lawyer. But also we did think that maybe there is a better approach to introduce introducing the students to the material, letting them know that this is an essential part. And yet there is space for students to really be supported and develop their own resiliencies to this. So we encourage students through the resilient learning statement, which will now be included in Karen's syllabi, to go through. And some of the language is written in the handout that we gave out at the beginning. So working on that, we actually developed, we're actually going to be developing 2 new toolkits. So I myself and I partnered with the Wellbeing Counselor at Allard, the embedded counselor, to actually find additional funding from the UBC Wellbeing Strategic Initiatives Fund. And then based on the Resilient Learning Project, it will be expanded, and we thankfully will be now working to create a teaching manual and one for students on resilient learning, so try like a toolkit. So super excited to work on that and continue developing that through the fall, and it'll actually be piloted in Karen's class.
So one of the things that I'm doing, and I'll speak to this more, is to try to provide more choice, again, consistent with UDL principles and multiple means of engagement. And this really ties in also to the idea of teaching to instill hope, which is when providing choices, and I have tried to do that in my course, to show to provide options that show how international law can be used and has been used to promote social justice. So before I used to have a technical exercise involving treaty analysis, and I've worked on the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide for many years. And I still will include that as one of the options. But I'm also going to include the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the Escazú Agreement on, and I'm not going to read the whole title because that will take my remaining minute. But the idea is to provide more recent examples of treaties that have benefited from the input of civil society, disability rights activists, for example, in trying to craft international legal responses that can promote the rights of persons with disabilities. And so, yeah, super excited about that. And sorry, I think I was also going to say, in terms of linking it to the trajectory, trying to bring in former students who work with international instruments in their practice.
And then finally, what did we learn? I think individually, or I'll talk to the unit level first, but we really found this power of collaboration and partnerships, just like many of the opening speakers talked about. Particularly in my work, Karen is actually retiring, unfortunately, quite soon. But then my office being embedded in the Allard School of Law will be able to continue the work and also expand upon it. And so really finding partners and allies who will continue the work and then ideally embedded in other courses.
Yeah, and what I learned individually is up there. I won't take up the time except to say I'm not going, well, I am going somewhere, but I'll still be around. And I have to say this has given me kind of a new lease on life. Incredible to be in this program. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So our next group is joining us online.
Okay, amazing. Well, I'm really happy to be here online today. It is a reflection, and I've had to do a lot of thinking about how UDL goals are also really helpful for me. I've really benefited from it, through this cohort model, and it's been kind of special to spend some time looking through the eyes of my course that my students see, but also for me, how I might feel as a student as well. I'm dealing with a little bit of a chronic pain flare-up, so it was really beneficial to present online today, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. So what Melissa and I worked on, which I'm excited to talk about, is designing a new course that will be in the BAUS program, the Bachelor's of Urban Studies, which is joint between planning and applied science and geography in arts. And I really wanted to focus on building the course kind of around assessments, new assessments, the design for learner agency. So this program is really rapidly growing. This course on planning for climate change will be an upper level undergrad elective in the nature of cities concentration, and it's the only kind of planning course that will be in that right now. I think there's only one other. I've taught a similar class at the graduate level to master students. And so we had the unique challenge of kind of thinking about like, how can I take what I've already done and what I think is working quite well at the master's level, but apply it to undergrads, and in a way that's really accessible and for people with different backgrounds. And so there's many things that I want to do, but the first thing and what we really tried to tackle is thinking through the kind of base assignment structure to integrate UDL principles. And similar to the last presentation, I think to do so in a way that really encourages hope. Climate is a difficult topic, we all know, and I don't want my students to leave the class feeling like, well, okay, now I'm overwhelmed and don't really want to work on this anymore. So thinking about how we can really use those UDL principles of centering learner agency. So to do that, what we decided for kind of building out the assignments for the full course is to do it in two parts of this section on case studies and a final synthesis. And so having students complete 3 case studies throughout the term with flexible deadlines so that one is kind of due in a third of each piece of the term. Doing these case studies on an action that happened, in a city that's in a climate action plan. And I've done a bunch of work on this. So I already have a kind of a big bank of them, but students will already also be welcome to pull a new city in. And what I'm looking for this to do is really help build a base of knowledge about applied planning strategies for climate change, but be able to then do this in a way that integrates into class activities. So students are not only engaging with their own case studies, but also those of other students, and kind of develop this shared toolkit that students can return to even after the class is done to kind of see what are all of these actions that have been taken on climate change. And then culminating in a synthesis assignment that gives options for multiple means of expression to synthesize insights from across case studies and the shared toolkit. And they can, choose between a variety of ways to do this and kind of end rather than like individual presentations, do it with a kind of a finding sharing day where students can also, share their findings through different multiple means of expression. So like I started a draft case study template that I'm not going to read through, but just have to kind of show generally what I'm thinking of that this could look like, and with some flexibility for students to, work with it in a way that works for them. And some just reflections here on how we sought to integrate multiple means of engagement, representation, and action and expression through this assignment. So just for sake of time, some examples. Throughout the case studies, using multiple means of engagement as, allowing students to select their own case studies from different cities to foster autonomy and personal relevance, but providing a plan bank with some, existing plans to limit the choice overwhelm, although, also allowing them with, with getting clearance to use a different plan, the flexible submission deadlines, and in-class group work to build on collaboration and shared learning. Similar with multiple means of representation, I'm really trying to think about these scaffolded templates to provide structure for students who benefit from guided formats, but without kind of, making it narrow and constrained. And then, it really opens up in the multiple means of action and expression through the final format, where students have options to choose. But what I really like to do and have to work on is to create a consistent rubric that across these formats to, ensure that the learning goals are still met. And I have a couple of those here around like clarity, creativity, and communication, that those all can be met through these multiple means of expression. So to wrap up, so my next steps, and I will be teaching this course in January, so I have some work to do over the fall, but, working on these rubrics to standardize them and make them really, understandable and easy to explain. I'm excited to plan in-class activities that really use these case studies to be able to foster that kind of, collaborative group learning where students can kind of do something, come reflect on it, edit it, do it again. And some of the technical things like, building out this bank for case studies, can I even store this many PDFs on Canvas, or, where can I put them? So some of the logistics. But I'm lucky because I'm not using a course release. I'll have some funding from TLEF to support course planning, working with a graduate student. So I'm excited about that. And that's all that I have. It was exciting, and I will look forward to kind of updating the group as it takes shape. I'm sure I'll have a lot to learn during the term, the first time I implement it. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Holly. Thanks for joining us online. Okay, our next group is from Arts. We have Janet and Saul George.
All right. Hi, folks. Seems like just yesterday we were down the hall for the kickoff, but time flies, and hopefully this reflection sort of shows us all how much effort and time we put into our project so far. If we haven't had a chance to talk or collaborate so far, I'm Saul. I work with the Arts Learning Center, and as part of the project team, I'm helping bring Janet's vision for a more UDL-friendly course to life.
Thanks, Saul. And I'm Janet. I'm a lecturer in the Department of Asian Studies, and echoing what Saul said, I felt like we spent so much time together earlier this summer. So this feels like a very happy reunion. And so I wanted to just briefly reintroduce you to the course. It's Asia 398, Narrative Literature in Pre-Modern India. So this is a course in Asian Studies. And it's a 3-credit course, which will be taught this upcoming winter term too. And you may be wondering, who are the students of this course? So not only are these students within Asian Studies, majoring or minoring in Asian Studies, but despite the narrow scope of the course, it is a literature and a humanities or arts requirement. And so we have students from all different faculties, all different years, experience levels at UBC. And therein lies one of the joys of the course, but then also one of the obstacles which have informed some of the goals of this project.
So as I'm sure most of you would have realized, it can get very chaotic trying to do everything everywhere all at once. So for our sanity, we ended up splitting the project into a few phases. This summer was very focused on learning, prototyping, getting feedback from the amazing UDL consultants and CFA students. Over the fall, we'll shift towards developing more resources and testing out some elements in Janet's other courses. And over the winter, the course will finally go live with our new improvements. We collect student feedback at various points before a final evaluation next summer, where hopefully our changes were pretty effective. And if there's any student feedback we find interesting, another chance to do another round of improvements. So our initial project goals, overly simplified because of the time limits, were to scaffold learning with targeted supplementary resources, foster more active engagement with a collaborative note-taking assignment, improve assessment accessibility with extended exam times, and lastly, promote knowledge dissemination through a UDL-informed final project. And now let's go in a bit more detail for each of those.
A little bit more detail, but not too much given our time. Actually, what we wanted to focus on, for those of you who may not be familiar with our project, give you a bit of an overview of our project goals. And for those of you who are familiar, let you know where we're at. You'll probably hear a lot of our conversations from this room kind of slipping into that. And also really the main lessons learned. So for our goal 1, we had to provide supplementary resources for the course because there's such a differentiated level of knowledge of the course content of students coming into the course. We wanted to have some type of a module, an optional pre-course module that would help everybody have a shared vocabulary for the course, even if they come into the course not having any background. The main lesson learned for us, you can read all of them, there were many, but it has to do with multiple means of engagement. And what we realized through conversations and through some of the professional development that we've had is that this doesn't have to be a resource for some students, but underlying the foundational principle of UDL, this is something that can help all students in the course. So we've shifted our goal to thinking instead of a supplemented targeted resource for some of the students to one that provides differentiated learning outcomes so that all students can benefit from this particular resource. And so the second goal was to create a collaborative note-taking system. So given the nature of the course, there is a fair amount of discussion. And while the lecture aspects of the course can be recorded to share with students who might not be able to attend class or, for various reasons, and also to help students who are facing linguistic and other barriers, what to do about the discussion that students would be missing out on as well or would want to refer back to. So we thought about this we talked about this a lot. And the main lesson here was that this note-taking system needs to have some type of scaffolding or graduated support. For instance, we don't have it on this particular slide, but imagine a blank Google document and every student in the course having access to it to write notes. Right. You can imagine that without the scaffolding, it could be a bit of a free-for-all. So what we came up with instead was this vision of using Cornell Notes that offers cues on the left-hand margin and also a place on the bottom to summarize. And because this is a mock-up, we don't actually have a summary here, but that was something that would be used.
Our third goal is focused on extended exam times. I'm going to skip it because of the time limitations, since our fourth goal is a lot more interesting. One of our major goals was to promote knowledge dissemination in terms of UDL, and what better way than having students become advocates. For this, we decided to scaffold in UDL throughout the term, so students are introduced to how these principles have affected the course design. They learn a bit more about how they can apply these principles, and finally, they have the choice of including it when designing their course artifacts. Lastly, an additional objective that came up through conversations was we realized having examples of UDL-friendly artifacts could be a useful resource for students. So we're also working on building out a public repository for that. And finally, a couple of quick wins, which we've tried to incorporate, things like making Canvas more of a one-click model, building out the syllabus, and just general best practices, things like alt text or revised transcripts.
So that's a very summarized summary of our course, and we're really excited to talk with you more about it here if you're encountering similar barriers, have had similar wins, and just really excited to be continuing this conversation. So thanks to everyone in this room for creating this environment and giving us this really precious opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janet and Saul. Okay, next up from the Faculty of Education, we have Sophia Nouri, Jamali Baroud, Eduardo Rebagliati, and Sarah Lockman.
Good morning. Thank you so much. I'm Sophia Nouri, and this is Dr. Jamili Baroud, and we work together on creating this manual in the Faculty of Education with myself and the LDDI team. That's why the other team members are not here, because they're continuing their important work outside this room. But it's such a wonderful opportunity to be here. I want to thank Afsane for all your support and as well for all the materials that were shared with us, for everyone who contributed to those things and the dialogues that we've had in person and online to and it really helped us to incorporate a lot of the UDL principles into our project.
Oh yeah, just incorporating UDL, we decided to show you an agenda so no one's lost as we're moving forward. But we all know where we're headed here. So we've got the challenges, the strategies we implemented, some of the lessons learned, anticipated impacts, and then next steps. And of course, our thank you to all of you. And we did want to briefly mention that although we've been thinking about this for a long time, I think it was reiterated as part of this UDL Fellowship program. That when we're thinking about technology, especially from my role, where I primarily work with technology, at least on this project, that we really have to think about ways that we're preserving the environment. And I think that a lot of the ways that we're using technology, we're really unaware of how we're harming the environment. And we have this commitment about reciprocity and care for the land. And I think that technology can sometimes get in the way of that, especially if we're thinking about AI and the different ways that we're implementing that in our work as well. So we just wanted to bring that forward before we got started. So some of the challenges we entered this project with was, I know this was kind of mentioned as well, is that the audience, I mean, you could provide a bit more context, but really the goal is to take an online resource and turn it into a MOOC, so a massive online course. And the resources is to support teachers to support refugee students. And so there is a lot of sensitive content, but also really diverse educators who also have diverse backgrounds and also perhaps had trauma in the past, but also were potentially refugees as well. And then thinking about the students they might be encountering. And so really figuring out not just like varying identities, but tech skills and how we could create a resource that was user-friendly for everybody, including those with, language divides. So a lot of complex elements there. Yeah, creating a culturally responsive and trauma-informed approach. So I think Sophia will likely speak more to this, but I'm really thinking about ways that we're not re-traumatizing folks and also not painting all refugee students with the same brush. And so really trying to showcase the diversity of students that could be in the classroom without overwhelming educators to feel like it's impossible to negotiate. And platform limit. So we originally used Articulate. I think we're going to maybe continue using it. Yeah. Yes. But there are just accessibility limitations, and they're very upfront about that within the policies and Articulate. And so we had a lovely conversation in our last UDL session, or maybe the second last online, about really just being upfront with any users about the limitations of the program before they actually enter it, instead of us feeling kind of guilty and not knowing how to negotiate those limitations. So really teaching us that we have the power to just be really vulnerable and honest about the things that we're not able to change, but also open to receiving feedback and working our best to provide accommodations if we can. So there's, I guess the basics of representation, like making sure there's text. So I think, we use text, but we also have audio narration. So making sure that no matter what is on the screen, there's an option to listen. And that is a limitation in Articulate. So making sure we can upload like a podcast recording or some other way of ensuring that they can actually listen to the content. And visuals, we had some interest. Oh, wow, am I that far? I'm just going to go into the real world case-based scenarios. So we've got some reflective prompts, really giving students the choice to, or teachers the choice to engage with a variety of activities and making the course downloadable.
Thank you. Okay, just to rush through this as quickly as you can. So, of course, we've learned so many important lessons, even though we were thinking about accessibility right from the start in terms of the kind of text that was provided to make sure that teachers would be able to read the text and really understand it, not using like speedback kind of language, but also making sure that there's flexibility in the content, but in terms of thinking about the students, because their needs change, so therefore teachers' needs change, and then thinking about materials that was actually really related to classroom issues and classroom scenarios more than just theory, because the theory can become very overwhelming, and making sure that we always have continuous reflections, not just with our educators who are using this material, but also with the designers who are putting these things together. So continuing that conversation is really important to us as we move forward. I really appreciated the different types of languages that we were brought to be aware of. For example, accessibility statements, but also in addition to like trigger warning statements. And I loved earlier the resiliency statements. So these are all wonderful things that I've learned and we've learned through this process that we will be incorporating in addition to assessments in particular, and making them more flexible and diverse. So we're hoping that this resource provides teachers with confidence when it comes to them actually teaching students with refugee backgrounds, making sure that the refugee experiences in the classrooms are more inclusive and welcoming, and then of course making sure that the material is accessible. And this UDL fellowship definitely provided so many opportunities for us to learn different ways to do that. Moving forward, we're going to be piloting the online resource before and during the time that we create it into a MOOC so that we can actually gather information about how teachers are actually able to use this in the classroom. So having that real life response in terms of research, and then also making sure that the language learner specific material and the cultural case studies are increased. And then, of course, integrating the interactive discussions so that teachers who are using the material can actually engage with each other through this online manual. Thank you so very much. Sorry to rush through that.
No, that's okay. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much, Sarah and Sophia. Our next group is the Faculty of Forestry. We have Sarah Barron and Frederick Key.
Thank you, everybody. Let me just start. Sorry. All good. Started the timer. Frederick went on leave, so sorry, it's just me presenting today about our project that went sideways from what we planned, but I think has ended up with students co-creating something quite beautiful. First, before I get started, I just want to express my extreme gratitude for this program to give us the support, the collegiality in this space to think about this work. So thank you, everybody who was involved in the program. I'll talk a little bit about young adults and university student well-being, a study that I had done that led to this project, and then some of the future initiatives that we're working on. I've worked in the sort of confluence of young adults and health and their needs in landscape for a while. And this is a previous publication just looking at how young adults use our green spaces and how we don't design green spaces for their needs. So we came up with this term, tolerant green spaces, to think about spaces that support young adults' needs. Oh, sorry, that support young adults' needs for social interaction and psychological restoration. And I don't have time to get into that, but it is grounded in that space. Last year, I had this opportunity to look at our university courtyards and do a short study on how students might be using them. I had student researchers, so it was really grounded in what the students were curious and learning about. We looked at 10 courtyards and we did a survey, participant observation, and a biodiversity audit to look at how courtyards are being used in this space. The results that really challenged me were the actual overall survey results, showing that students were only sort of neutrally able to concentrate on lectures. I think this sort of is an experience that we all have, and that they felt lonely. And so these two things were like sitting with me and the students for a while. The other thing that was sitting with us was this idea that students feel guilty taking breaks. If students can't come into our classroom able to concentrate, feeling lonely, and not ready to learn, how can we help them was sort of my question. Here's some sort of quotes that sort of give this sense of how we could be using our campus landscape to help students. So this is one of the courtyard typologies we looked at, and people have to spend time outside, otherwise they're sad. And this one, which I found really inspiring actually, was after spending time here, I feel like I belong. And so we have now moved on using these sort of conclusions that a diversity of nature is needed on campus. Students feel guilty taking breaks, and there's a lot of barriers to accessing nature across campus. To come up with this concept with the students called Nature Snacks, and what we're really just promoting is enable students to go outside, feel like they're welcome and that they belong, to take a short break in nature. It was kind of inspired by the fact that our first round of participant observation found a lot of people outside smoking and not doing much else. And I was like, if people are going outside to smoke, why can't they go outside to just take that rest in nature? Smoking in nature wasn't like a really good concept. So thankfully, someone came up with Nature Snacks. And so what we've done through this project is create a whole campaign that we've soft launched and will be hard launching in September. Just encouraging students to go outside when they're feeling sad, when they can't concentrate, for any reason they want, and to find a space that works for them. So thank you, 1 minute left. And the sort of slogan is, a snack is a bite you take in between meals to keep the hunger away. Why don't you do the same to nourish your brain? So the aim is to address guilt and loneliness by encouraging students to take snacks on nature. I will embed it into my class, but we also just wanted to create something for all UBC students. And it turns out students like Instagram as a platform. So yes, I'm using technology to get students outside in nature away from technology, but this is how we engage them. So we have hashtag or at Campus Nature Snacks. We just want to right now engage with students. We've got a survey going out to sort of understand how that works. We'll be using whatever they post on Instagram to sort of understand where students are going and try and create more of that. So campus and community planning is quite interested. And if anyone wants to join, we have, an Instagram handle here. It's neutral. It's a way. We've got a few other, like BCIT. We just presented it to them. They're keen to do this. It's just sort of a small public health campaign for our students that is going to be embedded in my Urban Forest and Human Wellbeing course. We'll get the students to pilot and test and keep going on this. And I am in the midst of building a Canvas module that'll just be open and accessible with all the Instagram content so that you could, if you're interested, just have a little nature snacks module in your Canvas course. If it's an option for students, it'll be free and open and easy to use with videos created by students, encouraging other students to take a break.
Thank you so much, Afsane. My name is Polina. I have been with the UDL Fellows program for 2 years now, and it's been such a pleasure watching it evolve and include more student perspectives year after year. This has been so incredible. And so right now we're going to have a little panel discussion with some questions for our student consultants. And then afterwards, we'll be introducing an exciting new project that we've been working on. So without further ado, I would like the students to introduce themselves before we can get into the questions.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to see you here. My name is Farah. I go by they, them pronouns. I'm a student with a disability, and as well, I'm an engineering student in the Faculty of Applied Science.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is Reina. I also use they, them pronouns, and I am going into my 5th year in cognitive systems, and I'm also minoring in Asian Canadian and Asian migration studies, and I'm a student with a disability. I use mobility aids, and I also have learning disability.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming again. My name is Emmy. I use she, her, and they, them pronouns. I am a 3rd-year psychology student in arts, and I am a student with learning disabilities.
Hi, everyone. I'm Xiaoying. I just graduated from my Master of Public Health degree. And thank you. Yeah, I have selective hearing loss, and I'm neurodivergent.
Thank you. So starting off, as we've been very much a part of the collaboration with the faculty members here today and consulting with the UDL Fellows program, I would like to ask you guys what some examples were where you felt meaningfully engaged in shaping teaching or program decisions and what made those moments impactful for you.
Yeah, I can start. So this past spring, I took an Indigenous health class for my requirement for the degree. And in the class, there was a PhD student. Her name is Elena. She is deaf, and we had 3 interpreters for the 3-hour-long seminar every week. And it just felt very inclusive to me that this is a possibility to start with. And then there was a lot of like sharing circles and discussions and group projects that without these interpreters, it would be impossible for Elena to participate in. And I just felt really grateful that I was there to witness how she was helped or like she was assisted using the ASL interpreters for her learning journey, and her PhD thesis, I think, is on early screening for deaf children. And with this like higher education experience, I think it would be very adaptable to her research as well. So that was a really enriching experience to sit in the classroom with her and witness her journey in the class. And I think that's when I felt I was very engaged just by sitting there with them. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'll continue on that excellent point. I wanted to focus more on thinking about the meaningful impact I've had in this UDL's program. This is my first time being a student consultant for this program, and I really wanted to highlight how meaningful it was for me to be able to present alongside with Polina on the student engagement, our presentation, and as someone who has difficulty with paying attention and learning, being able to present on a topic that is very important and very interesting to me was just like such a great opportunity for me to be able to see educators and instructors wanting to take the time to listen to a student and being able to understand their struggles and trying to just do the best that they can to make it easier for everyone.
Thank you. Those are incredible answers, as always. The second question that I would like to get into is our visions for the future. What are your hopes for the future of teaching and learning at UBC, especially in terms of equity, access, and partnership with students?
Yeah, I feel like during my time as with this program, I have learned so much from all the other profs from different faculties. So I'm from arts, and I feel like my knowledge is very art specific, but being able to talk to people from different disciplines, I was able to learn so much more about accessibility. And I feel like I really hope for the future that there can be more collaboration between faculties, and like people can share their visions of accessibility in the classroom, because I feel like in some faculties, like they've already figured out like certain ways to do, like maybe make field work more accessible, maybe make lab work more accessible, but other faculties don't have the same knowledge. So like but the solutions can still apply. So if everybody gets together and like is able to share their ideas of accessibility, I think that would really help bring us forward. And yeah, so maybe in the future there could be like conferences or something where people can come and talk about accessibility. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I was going to say, because I went to a small liberal arts college, there's more resources available for accessibility, and the challenges are different. But I do feel like even though teaching is difficult, and sometimes like UBC deal with large numbers of students in one classroom, just to have faith in your students and hope, like really hope, like genuinely for the best for your students, instead of be like, I think a lot of professors I know from like maybe older generations have this mentality of like, this is a selective program, or like you have to be competitive enough to be like good enough for this program or this major. I think in general, if you don't believe in your students, they can't do well. And I can tell you 100% as a student for this past 6 years, the grades is not the biggest criterion when we evaluate a faculty. How you encourage them, like what the learning experiences has been, or like the TA interaction has been, is like a much bigger percentage. Like, for example, my first year in world politics class, I cannot tell you anything about world politics anymore. But the first essay, I got a B minus, and I started going to the office hours a lot. And the second essay, I got an A minus. And that was still like my only B graded class in my undergrad. But I just really appreciated that my professor like really was willing to help me and like understand the challenges I was facing. And I ended up like loving him, like even though I didn't get like the best grade that possible, but just as a learning experience, like just really try and hope that you're there for their growth, instead of like trying to make a test as difficult as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And speaking of those challenges, we have all come in here with kind of a motivation and maybe things that we've experienced as individuals that have made maybe learning more difficult in the context of our current system. So I would love to know more about what barriers, whether it's academic, social, systemic, or structural, you guys have encountered during your learning journeys.
I mean, I can start. For me, I think the biggest barrier, and it seems like, I don't know, like I had professors here in my first year who actively told me to not use my CFA accommodation. They found that it was too much of a hassle and they would single out the students using their CFA accommodation. And this was during a summer language course. And so rather than kind of encouraging students and even reframing their course, they just kind of were singling us out, telling us, oh, this is too much work, like for you to come to my office outside, for me to have to do extended time. And it really kind of set that precedent of feeling shame. And so for me, that took a lot to overcome, especially as a student who in their first year didn't have CFA accommodations for their first semester and was in fact unaware that it was even a possibility. And I think that just comes from growing up in a small town. And in my second term, I had my advisors, because I was on academic probation, tell me to use CFA. And so for me to kind of regurgitate into that cycle of shame really was a big barrier and kind of set me back in my learning journey. And yeah.
Yeah, that to bounce off of like what you were talking about when it came to shame, like I think a big thing that I struggled with in my academic journey has been like a lot of like mental load barriers when it comes to advocating for myself. And then the, like Wendy was mentioning a lot before, like just the hoops that you have to get to, similar to Emmy in my first term, I didn't have any accommodations, and a lot of it was contacting professors, begging them to accommodate me for exams or midterms or quizzes, and then just like hoping that they would be open to it or that they had the resources to be able to do that. But then even just beyond that, when I did have the accommodations, it's just the regular mental load of sending in my accommodation letters, advocating for myself in the classroom constantly, and then also like advocating for myself to students and in groups, and then also just like setting up appointments on a regular basis. So I have like everything that I need in terms of medication and up-to-date prescriptions and everything like on an ongoing basis. I think that's on a personal level a barrier. But then I think on a systemic way, a barrier I regularly face is just like the academic calendar. In terms of like the courses that I have to take, I'm in engineering. 6 to 7 courses is the standard, but it's not very doable for me if I want to be able to sleep. So I think just like being flexible with how we plan courses and understand where students are coming from is going to be like something I look forward to changing in the future.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Going off of that, like I would love to know what inclusion feels like for you on the other side of things. How do you define accessibility, inclusion, and a sense of belonging and education and at UBC?
Yeah, so for me, accessibility and inclusion really means that I can show up to my classes and I can show up to learn no matter what capacity I'm in. I'm physically disabled, and a lot of the times my body is in a lot of pain. So just like getting into the classroom can be a big struggle. But like if I manage to do that, I'm at low capacity, then I know that I can still be at a place where I can learn because I'm paying a lot of money to be here and I'm paying to learn, and I want to like make use of my education where I can. So like having like accessibility like practices in place so that like if I show up to class and maybe I can't go down the stairs, but like having a space for me to sit at the back, or like having it on Zoom if I can't go to class, that sort of thing. Like just making sure there's so many options for people of different capacities to come and be able to participate in learning. And like as we know, accessibility is like a structural issue, but like for the time being, there's not a lot of like government policies in place like to enforce accessibility. So I really appreciate all of you being here and wanting to like make your classes more accessible, because that start is like what makes learning more inclusive. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think to bounce off of what Reina was saying too, like accessibility, I really love this quote of like accessibility means options. So like they were mentioning, like just having options of recorded or live stream lectures, having the option of how you navigate a classroom or the course content, and just being able to make it so that it fits yourself. So like, I guess an example is I use a lot of online or computer tools to be able to read my textbook. So when professors have like exclusively physical textbooks and it's very hard to find those resources online. I'm struggling because my nose is pressed against the page and my back and eyes are strained and everything is a struggle. But I think when it comes to resource options, that's been really helpful for me. So if there's online resources, if there's a PDF version of the textbook, that's really helpful. But I think in addition to that, I think just like a really vast capacity for empathy when it comes to people who of all walks of life and all intersections of life, that's really a big part of what inclusion and accessibility means to me.
I forgot I wanted to mention this just now, but another like important thing about accessibility is like throughout the term, you don't know what's happening with students, and like perhaps things come up that require them to need accommodations, or like someone develops chronic pain or a disability over the course of a class. So like having like accessibility structures in place can help when things come up. So it's not just good for like people who are currently disabled, but for able-bodied people as well to have options.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points from everyone. And those are all the questions that we have for today. So I would like to thank Xiaoying, Emmy, Reina, and Farah for being a big part of this, such a huge part, and for being such well-spoken and amazing individuals as well. And for, yeah, helping you guys, but also helping me with what I'm about to talk about. But yeah, so thank you so much for your answers. And you guys have I hope that you guys know that you're making a really big impact. As you guys wish, if you would like to. Okay. All right. So now I would like to talk a little bit about something we've all been working on. This has been a collaborative project between the students to create a new page under the resources section called Student Voices. And under that page, we have created a toolkit and a few videos that are going to go up. So the UDL Student Toolkit is a student-led resource of basically things that we as students would like you as staff and faculty to know. And one thing that I want to really emphasize, and what we tried to do, was not repeat everything that you've already heard from UDL, from, for example, the CAST website or from the UDL Fellows program. We wanted this to be a standalone resource of student perspectives and opinions and things that maybe we feel that we want to be heard about. So in the UDL Student Toolkit, we have things such as frequently asked questions about things like scaffolding assignments and structures that have helped us learn, or recorded lectures and reserved seating in classes, or things that students think like are tips to reduce anxiety before exams, or how to hold an engaging lecture, how to make sure that your classroom is accessible for everybody. And so there are a lot of these pages that we've kind of collaborated on to make sure that you have kind of a baseline of where we're coming from. And this is not by any means a sort of religious text where you have to follow it. And this is kind of everything that, we demand, but, it would mean a lot for us as students if you looked into this, and it will be available on the UDL Hub website, and as well as it will be linked in this slide deck when it goes out to you. And I would also like to mention that this is an ever-evolving resource. After this summer, we will have people continuing to add to this, and hopefully with some data from the CFA and some more sort of accessibility tips and more resources as we go along. So, and I would like to once again thank all the students that helped me collaborate on this and create this for you guys. So that's that. But wait, there's more. We've also made videos. So we have 2 videos of Reina and Emmy, who have just presented here. And they have also been oh so kind enough to volunteer to create sort of it's about a 4-minute video each of their perspectives and stories of things that they have seen and experienced in their learning environments. So I would like to also let you know that those videos will be up in the coming weeks as well, and you will be able to view them and engage with them. And yeah, it is such an immense privilege, I think, to have sort of student perspectives so readily available. And yeah, it's been a pleasure being able to create these videos with them. And yeah, so that is another thing that is going out. But yes, so I would just once again like to say, just as everyone else has been saying, thank you so much. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for including us. And I know that UDL is, you know, student forward in theory, but to include it in practice and actually listen to us is something that, you know, not all students are getting and not all students feel heard all the time. So from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure from the bottom of all the other students, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Paulina, and all the students for your wonderful work and contribution to this program. We now move into our second block of team presentations. Let's welcome our next 5 teams.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've moved on to our next group, and from Land and Food Systems, we have Thorsten Knipfer. I hope I pronounced that properly. Yeah, did I? Okay. And Duncan McHugh. You are good to go.
Thank you. Tough act to follow. Thanks so much, students, not just today, but throughout the entire program, both as a part of the planning committee and as one of the fellows. It's been so great having you be such a big part of this year's programming. My name's Duncan McHugh. I'm a digital and instructional media producer in the Faculty of Land and Food Systems, and I'm also a sessional instructor. And this was my second time in the Fellows program, so it's been great to participate again as one of the Fellows, and this is my colleague.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Thorsten Knipfer. I'm an assistant professor in Land and Food Systems. And yeah, I have the pleasure to work together with Duncan on improving one of our courses. And I will share with you some of our ideas now over the next 5 minutes. Duncan, was there anything else you wanted to add? Okay. Yeah, first of all, I want to say I was really inspired over the last couple of months being part of this workshop. It really helped me to kind of reflect on sort of certain things I did in my class subconsciously, but now more understand what is behind these kind of strategies I was using, and also to implement them more consciously, if this makes sense. I guess more of you had this experience. So yeah, thank you for that I can be part of this. So 2-hour course. So I'm a crop physiologist. So I'm very much concerned about agriculture and irrigation management and sustainable use of our resources for agriculture. And I have developed a course that is focused on plant-water relations and plant water usage in 2020. And I'm teaching this course now since the last 5 years. We have an enrollment that fluctuates anywhere between like 30 to 15 students, depending on the year. but there's a lot of interest from students on just learning more about our food, where it's produced, what it takes to produce foods, and also understanding like how much water do our plants need? You know, how much do I water my plants on a balcony or inside? Things like that. So students can really engage with these topics, and it's fantastic to see. There's always one problem that getting students to the field and making them aware of like agricultural sites that are relatively close by to Vancouver. We always forget that even we live in like a city of millions of people, there's actually food produced just outside of our door. And up here you see one of these beautiful hazelnut orchards that you would find in the Fraser Valley. So one of our first goals was to develop a learning module that we titled How It's Made, and bringing sort of the field to the classroom. We have hired a person, Stephen Bristow, who helps us with developing this module. The learning objectives are to particularly examine sustainable irrigation strategies and discuss harvest procedures for a typical perennial crop in BC, such as hazelnut. The barriers that we wanted to overcome are that students have general difficulties of attending field trips, and we talked about this in the past a little bit, so I don't need to go into the details here. Here we have a little diagram for you of how we envision the implementation of this learning module. So these two components, a synchronous and asynchronous component. We are developing a video material that would simulate the field activity that is followed up by an in-class discussion where students report on some of their important observations from the video that will tie into an asynchronous group activity where students actually design a questionnaire. Oh my God. This is like teaching a class. Anyways, so the students will actively engage then with the grower who's part of in the video. And that will be followed up with a presentation, discussion board, and then we round this up with this breakout group about future opportunities. Okay, so, but then there's a second learning module because one is not enough. And we really want to make this course as engaging as possible. So the course has elements about water movement in plants and the anatomy of a plant and how water gets from the roots to the leaves. And they often see these microscope images as you see up here. So the plan is here to make students better to understand what this textbook information actually means in terms of plant function and how our crops grow, and that ties back to our resource management. So the idea is to develop a, you're very fast. we have like this in-class plant water transport model of pipes. That is what you see here on the right, on the top. It really shows you how the water moves. The students will have then asynchronous group activities outside of class to sketch their own diagrams with information from 3D prints of the anatomy of the plant, and that will also then follow up into a discussion group. Last point, so in terms of implementation, this is the syllabus of the course. The details don't really matter. So we're planning to implement that hopefully for the upcoming term 2 in the winter. So we would have one learning module that will start after class 3, just before the midterm break. And then we have the second learning module thereafter. That's kind of the plan. I think a lot of things can still change, but it's great of working in this team and just bouncing off some ideas and just, yeah, we all have a lot of expertise in different areas. And I think if we can combine these expertise, we can truly, develop these kind of activities that makes it most engaging and break down some of these barriers. And yeah, it was great to hear from those students. As an instructor myself, you often are aware of these kind of issues because you don't have the chance to talk to the students on that kind of level. So yeah, thank you again.
Thanks, Duncan. Thanks, Thorsten. Okay, next up we have Pharmaceutical Sciences, Dr. Jillian Reardon and Bree Weir.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone in the room and online for all your support. You're stuck with just me today. Unfortunately, Bree is sick. She did a lot of the heavy lifting here, so everything you see is very much a joint partnership. So I'm Jillian Reardon. I'm with Faculty of Pharmaceutical Sciences, and we are going to be talking about our Pharm 324 redesign project. So Pharm 324 was launched in 2020. I co-created it as a response to new funding from the Ministry of Health to create new pharmacist positions within primary care teams across BC. So I would say the first, 4 or 5 years were really focused on just developing the content, refining it over the years, fleshing out what this course looked like. And then this summer was really a wonderful chance to reflect on how we were delivering the content. And I will say this whole program just blew my mind open in terms of UDL and what we wanted to be mindful of. And so definitely move from that sort of unconscious incompetence, moving along to being a little bit more competent with this. And I will say my initial reaction was we need to redesign the whole course and, blow it up and start from square one. But then, having a bit of a reality check, we really focused on 3 goals here. So looking at our assessments, because we've had a lot of feedback from students about the nature of assessments, the volume of assessments. We wanted to look at flexibility, attendance, and participation, and how we assess that, and then giving Canvas a much needed makeover. So in terms of our assessment redesign, we had previously 4 case assignments based on real patient cases that were quite complex in nature that students would walk through throughout the term. We don't have a final exam, so these case assignments make up the bulk of their final mark. Year after year, we had feedback from students. They were too time intensive. They were too complicated. They didn't actually know how to complete them based on the standards we had set. And so what we've decided to do for our next iteration in September is to do the first case assignment together as a class so that we can calibrate expectations. Learners are clear on what to expect. We will post exemplars for them. And so all of that came as inspiration through what we learned within this program. Because we were finding students were spending way too much time. These assignments were meant to be maybe 3-4 hours, and they were spending 8, 10, 12 hours on them. So really setting the stage for that by completing it together as a group. And we've also cut the case assignments from 4 to 3 as a result. So reducing that overall burden in terms of the case workload and hopefully still enabling them to achieve the same learning outcomes and get exposure to these cases. The next component, which is linked to the case assignments, is looking at the weighting and introducing the flexible assignment weighting. And I think we've talked about that in this group, borrowing from the Land and Food Systems app that we will put into Canvas to allow students to self-weight within that assignment group. So as a default, it will default to sort of the usual weighting, but they will have the option if they want one to be worth more or less, depending on how they've performed. So just giving them a little bit of agency over that and allowing them to shine in terms of their strengths and maybe a case they did particularly well on. And then in the past, we've always had a final group presentation, which is often met with mixed reaction. And so we've actually decided to change it to an individual submission. So we have a longitudinal group case that runs over the course of the term. So there will still be some group work, but that main final submission will be now individual, and students will given options for delivery modality. So they could do a written assignment, they can do an audio or video recording, or we have included their choice, and that's something they could pitch to us as the course coordinators and have that reviewed and approved for their final submission. So trying to really have multiple means of engagement and representation through the assessment piece. Attendance and participation was our second real goal, and we do have a participation mark for this course. And in the past, it's really relied on, bum in seat, coming to class, being there, and being able to participate. And again, through the course of this program, really realizing that's probably not fair to a lot of students. It's not the most accessible way to deliver content. And so as a first baby step, we have made 1 week asynchronous. So we've moved that onto a Canvas asynchronous session. And then we've introduced some flexibility in terms of discussions. And this was from one of our student representatives who shared this idea with us. And so for discussions, we now are providing the option that they can have a group discussion and submit, or they can complete an individual discussion on their own time and submit that as a reflection. Canvas course redesign, this is all Bree, but a lot of renaming, reorganizing, just making sure that we're doing consistent grouping, consistent naming for ease of navigation. We've introduced a welcome video, so to try to kind of humanize the instructors and speak to accessibility needs within that welcome video, as well as a optional Qualtrics survey where students can confidentially share any needs, any requests, anything that would be important for us to know. Final thoughts, like I said, our first thought was like, we want to do everything, but let's really just focus on what can we tangibly accomplish for this next iteration. We will seek student feedback, look to make improvements for future cohorts. But we've had so many great ideas. We have a big list of options and things we want to think about for the future. Bree's analogy was like going to Costco on a Sunday, you're sort of sampling everything and trying everything. So being realistic, but also keeping in mind what opportunities we could integrate in the future and knowing this is really just the first baby step towards making some really hopefully meaningful changes. So thank you very much to all of you in the room and online.
Thank you, Jillian. Okay, next up from the Sauder School of Business, we have Erica Hill and Angela Liu.
Hello, I'm Erica. This is Yuan. Yuan is our amazing work-learn student, and Angela is camping in the woods right now, so she's not able to make it. Our project is increasing basic accessibility in 3 first-year solder courses. Those are our courses. Our goal is to add alternative text to all the images, add closed captioning to all the videos, make all the PDFs accessible, and to do this with as little effort on the instructors and students as possible. We focused on multiple means of representation. I'll just kind of gloss over that a little bit for time. So we wanted to focus on the challenges and lessons learned. So the biggest challenge was getting access to the course content. So we are not the instructors, so we had to request access. So instructors were not showing up in the courses, they're not assigned. There's several sections to all of these courses. So there's usually course coordinators, which were assigned very end of July. So trying to figure out who those were, ask for access to the coordinated sandboxes. But also most instructors are teaching during the summer, and they are not building their courses until 2 weeks before the course starts. So lots of the course content isn't available yet. So out of 21 course sections, we have access to 2 so far. So we're just being patient. So alt text. I'm just gonna look. So we want to abide by FIPA #1. But we also found we were trying to find good AI that would do alt text. Lots of AI thinks it's really good at doing it, and it's not. ChatGPT is the best, but you need a really good prompt. And then what we ran into is there's a lot of complex images that are very hard to describe well without going overboard. AC was amazing. I think we talk to AC every day, pretty much. Thank you for your help trying to figure out where the line is, too much or not enough. So you really need to have a content expert to review these complex images. For our closed captioning, so we mostly use Panopto at Sauder. So what we found is we wanted to just set the settings to say automatically have closed captioning on, but we found that the browser doesn't like you to do that. So if I watched a Panopto video and I said, oh, I don't want closed captioning on this one, even though if the instructor set the settings to say have closed captioning on, the browser would remember that and turn it off. So we worked with the studio and they helped us create some HTML to get closed captioning to turn it on automatically. The students can still turn it off. And we actually found a free FIPPA compliant site called Riverside. So if anyone's looking to do really good closed captioning that can capture accents, and it captures, I think, pretty much, it's way better than the Panopto, and we tried the Kaltura automatic closed captioning. This was the best out of all of them. Okay, so deciding how to make PDFs accessible. So there are multiple ways you can do that, which I didn't know until we did this. And we tried to find a way that was easy enough for the instructors to do it, but accessible for the students. So you could do table of contents or bookmarks. We decided to do bookmarks. I'm mentioning this, so if you have questions, you can come and talk to us later. The one challenge that we ran into is now you need a paid version of Adobe to do this, which we found out after. So that's another challenge for instructors to do this later after we do the first version. We also are struggling with how to measure success. So there's not a lot of data associated with what we're trying to do. And we don't want to put more work for the students. So we're trying to not do another survey. So we're trying to add questions to a pre-existing survey, use some data from the CFA office, which they're helping provide for us, and just noting all of the touch points that we're doing within the courses. So our impacts, we hope to make content access easier. So these are all first-year students. We just want them to be able to access it when they come into the course. Less work. So we want to have fewer accommodations, which equals less work for students and instructors. And then this will copy over year to year to year, so they don't have to do it every year. And then pass all this knowledge along. So UWA's been great at creating instructional tutorials, text and video. And we're going to share this with the instructors after we do the edits, and share it with our ed tech team, and then hopefully share it with other faculties and institutions. Thanks.
Thank you, Erica and Juan. Okay, moving along. From science, we have Dr. Matt Tarling and Lindsay Nelson.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Matt is traveling, so he couldn't be here today. But a lot of what I'll be presenting is work he's done, and he's done a huge amount beyond what I'm showing today. So I encourage you to reach out to him if it's kind of any subject material you're interested in. Specifically, what I'll be talking about that was kind of our focus of this UDL project that then expanded into some more areas in the courses is looking at how students are learning kind of 3D concepts in geology. Specifically, Matt's course is 323 structural geology, and I've been looking at a few kind of key activities and labs in 210, which is earth science for engineers. Both of these are required courses for geologists and various kind of engineers, specifically geological engineers, both courses they'd be taking. And I brought some props, I always do. But this is basically what we're trying to get students to understand is this is a geology map. There's a ton of information. The colors are kind of representing what the bedrock, what the surface of the ground would look like, what rocks would be there, how they interact with the topography, and then cross-section showing what's happening underground, and getting students to kind of look at this and understand what it is and how it would connect. You might not be able to tell this is a part of the Rocky Mountains. So think about what the Rockies look like if you've seen them. Maybe many people haven't. But to be able to look at this and know, oh yeah, that's the Rockies. They're like, oh yeah, that looks like that. And taking from nothing to kind of that level of understanding. So this is one of the kind of first introductory concepts in understanding how layers in the earth kind of interact with topography and what those surface expressions look like. This is a traditional way it's taught, just kind of pictures of these block diagrams, and then the resulting kind of surface, like if you're top-down view, map view of what those would look like. This is how it's been taught for decades, and this is how we still had it in our classes. And then we're thinking of what are different ways we can introduce these concepts or still cover this, but have multiple modes basically of representing this. So we created new block diagrams that then we can also create other versions of, both 3D digital models that can then students can look at, not necessarily in class. They can rotate them, manipulate them, and look at things. There's a platform called Visible Geology where you can also build these models that are more specifically geology based and kind of play with them and make cross sections and explore. And then also we have capacity for making 3D models on 3D printed models in our department. So we also have corresponding 3D models that can be used in labs that connect to the paper kind of lab report version, these 3D versions that will be available through Canvas, and then the physical models. And those tactile models also, we'll see, were designed to kind of support if we did end up with students that were really low vision, to already kind of have some things in place. We'd have to, increase the accommodations, but at least we have kind of a starting point in some activities now. So these are the new versions of those same principles, that rule of V's of kind of how different tilted beds look in valleys is basically what it comes down to. There's this is an example of, I think it'll play, of a 3D version of that can be shared. And Matt's found a program and a way to create them that's compatible in multiple programs, easier, relatively easy to manipulate in 3D. The name of what he's using is escaping me right now. But that's been very useful. And then, oops. We also have, this is Visible Geology, which is through Sequent, which is, they do a lot of the 3D modeling in the industry, but then have this kind of educational platform that's free and online. And you can create similar models with kind of greater levels of geological information. So as the video plays, you'll see you can put on kind of topo lines, you can create cross sections. Students could play with this and make their own models to kind of help understand the concepts they've been learning. And we have versions of activities and maps that we're using in class created now in this platform. These are the 3D printed blocks of that rule of V's. You can see there's actually a raised surface as well. So if you were very low vision, you could feel the model instead of just having this one I have here is just the color contrast, but we should have like a raised edge or a tactile difference. There's the kind of comparison between the two. Yeah, we just have now more choice in the learning tools. People can use more options, more chance to practice on their own, which was important. And the next steps too is we haven't changed how these things are being assessed though. That's a question. This is Matt's questions on this slide. I think for this year, both these classes run in September. So we'll be keeping the same kind of assessment format, and which is maybe an opportunity to compare previous year's results to the next year and then think about changing the assessments more in the years to come. Just this is also very basic thing I've been doing is just on the one side is the old maps from 210 activities, which have some design issues in being legible. And so they're not fully accessible. I looked a bit into making something fully accessible, screen reader accessible. And that really wasn't possible because students need to be able to draw on these, work on these. This is what they use for activities, but just making them just more readable and clearer is a very basic step that makes a big difference. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Okay, we have our last group for this portion before our break, and we have from the Faculty of Science, Dr. Hagar Goldberg and Jenny Wagner joining us online.
So I'll try to cover everything in 5 minutes. This is my biggest challenge because I want to share a lot with you. Okay, so Thank you, everyone. First of all, thank you for all the presenters so far and the students. It's been really interesting and inspiring. And I also see a lot of connections between how we think and what we did. I'm very happy to present today the project that Jenny Wang from Skylight, the wonderful Jenny, and myself worked on. This is an open educational resource, so it's part of my course, my neuroscience course, but actually it applies across courses, across disciplines, so everyone can use it once it's ready. And the idea of this open educational resource that we built is to enhance accessibility, effectiveness, and student agency through both UDL and the neuroscience of learning. And the challenge that gave birth to this project was that in my course, I teach the neuroscience of human learning, and I talk a lot about neurodiversity and how learning is so diverse by nature and how learners are so diverse. But then I wanted to personalize learning and to walk the talk. And the question was always like, how do I do it in scale? In my large classes of 150 students per section, especially when I say that, you know, learning is not one size fits all. How do we do it actually? So we tried different things. The approach at first was to utilize technology to translate the content into many modalities. But this direction led us again to the problem where I'm again the bottleneck, where UDL is only top down, then it all based on my capacity, my time, and of course, you all know this, it applies to all of us. We want to do the maximum, and then we decided to actually reframe this bottleneck problem and say, okay, maybe it's not just a bug, it can be a feature if we shift from this instructor-based personalization, which is of course going to continue, but also to create, in addition, simultaneously, a bottom-up structure or a more distributed structure when we can give students, we can provide the structure, the tools, the scaffold to drive their own exploration of learning, understand themselves as learners, what they need, what will benefit them, and to personalize their process. So in that sense, we think of UDL as something that dismantle barriers and enhance access, but also empower students. And this is, of course, for our neurodivergent students, but also for every student across the spectrum. So this is, again, thinking of, you know, expanding accessibility beyond the Center for Accessibility and bring it to the classroom. So we created this website, which is a resource. Maybe I can skip some slides just to give you a quick tour in this website very quickly. So. Okay, so this is our first version of the website. MAPLE stands for Multiple Access for Personalized Learning Exploration. So this is really to scaffold the learning exploration so students can use it to learn more about themselves as learners and then navigate or use this information to find the tools, the technological tools that can help them enhance their learning, make their learning more multimodal. They can learn about the principles, both the UDL and the science and the neuroscience, the cognitive science behind this resource and behind this philosophy. They can add tools if they want. They can, you know, jump ahead and search for tools using different features and filters that we created, or they can look for tools based on modalities, based on learning modalities. in the process, they can learn about what are these modalities, what they mean. And if they're not sure what modality they want to search for or to focus on, we also have a tool or some user guidance through some guiding questions to learn about their learning style, their learning preferences, their strengths, their challenges. So this can guide them to find the tools. Within each tool, they have different ways. So there are filters that they can use to, again, narrow the search. They can view the tools independently and read about each one. If they benefit more from, diving into something and read each one individually, they have examples and some information. Or for those that benefit more from comparative view, we also have it in a table mode. So they can see everything at once and compare. For some learners, this is the most beneficial view. I don't know how I'm doing with time, so I'm going to go back to the slides if I still have a few minutes. I don't know. How am I doing with time?
Probably 1 minute.
1 minute. Okay, this is all I need.
Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I just there's too much.
No, all good. All good.
Okay, so, okay, let's go back to the slides. Oh, sorry. So I'm going to skip some of these. It's all in the slide deck, so you can see those in the slide deck that we shared. But the idea is to help students by scaffolding multiple means of content representation so they can do it. And in the exploration, they'll personalize their learning and understand themselves better as learners, support their self-awareness as learners and independence and agency. And this one is key. It's very important to me to normalize diverse learning approaches. It's not about accommodation. I mean, it's not only about accommodation or us providing something, but this is just something this is how learning works. This is how the human expression works. So it's just something normal and wonderful and beautiful, and reducing instructor bottlenecks by sharing responsibility, agency, and so on. I just want to thank this cohort, this amazing program, and also just to say huge thank you to all our students involved in this project. Some of them are mine students in NSI 140 that provided a lot of feedback, and also our LTRs, Praise Fung and Zenia Lau, which really make this wonderful work and bringing this vision to life. So thank you, everyone. And if you're interested in this, please shoot us an email, or we're going to share it in the cohort. Everyone are welcome to use this.
So we're going to get into our third block of teams here, our presentations rather. So up next, we have Ainsley Camps, Judy Chan, and Holly Bergeron-Dumais from CTLT.
All right, thank you. And thank you for the flexibility with the schedule. So we titled this a course design resource ? For reasons that I hope will be clear by the end of this presentation. So what's our background? Well, I came out of this project ostensibly to transform resources that were associated with a synchronous CTLT workshop, the course design intensive workshop, to an open access UBC website. And this was the initial goal. Take workshop materials, transfer them to a website that everyone could access. That simplifies the process of facilitating the workshop, simplifies the process for participants. In principle, this goal is simple. In practice, we came up against many challenges and had to make many decisions that I'll quickly go over. And I think it highlights the relevance of UDL to what we all are doing. And I think I see that we share challenges with all the teams in the room today. So what are these challenges? Well, on the one hand, making an open access web resource necessarily opens the space up for a different kind of audience. So now we're not just dealing with workshop participants who we know who are taking the workshop, who we know will complete all the work. We're dealing with a wider audience that may have different capacities for engagement with a web resource on course design. So we have to start thinking about how to adapt what we're putting online to a wider audience, to this spectrum of engagement and capacities of for engagement and prior knowledge. So that brings up another challenge, is that now our learning activities, which used to be tied to a particular workshop activity that could dovetail into synchronous work, now need to be standalone. So we need to design self-standing modules based on prior content that assume relevance when part of a separate standalone web page. Then that leads to another challenge, which is we have to start reconceiving what we're doing, not in terms of just workshop facilitators, but also in terms of course designers ourselves or just learning resource designers. That involved a lot of conceptual thinking, a lot of time spent thinking about, okay, why are we doing this? How is this useful? To whom is it useful? And also maybe maybe to lighten things up a little bit, we wanted things to be less text heavy. That's always a challenge, but also building in that accessibility component took some time as well. So what did we end up doing? Well, originally we wanted to transfer most of the content of the course design intensive workshop to web format. We could not do this in 3 months. Additionally, we are not web designers, but we did our best and we built 3 self-standing web modules for new faculty or instructors who are just getting into the process of course design to help them along with future web modules to come. So this is next year, maybe in the future, who knows, but this is what we've got for now. We spent a lot of time establishing a consistent template for activities that worked in a web format, and I'll show you that on the next slide coming up. And we say UDL-ified because we were building in awareness of different participants. So we kind of had this conversation where we said, okay, who's the person who can engage the least and needs the most compressed activity? Who's the person who needs, who has the capacity to put in a lot of time critically reflecting about this, who might want to take the workshop? And how do we address all of these people with our resource? And that comes into, I think, the most pressing part of UDL for us in this design process, which was capacities for engagement. So what does that look like? Well, here's an example of a web resource in progress. So this module is leading participants through the practice of empathy mapping and thinking about learner-centered teaching. And we provide 3 options for engagement. One that takes a small amount of time and gets you as quickly as possible to some kind of learning outcome. So think about learner-centered teaching, answer a few reflective questions that start planting a seed. And we go all the way to option C, which is kind of our scuba diving icon there, where we prompt you and tell you how to build an empathy map that will get you thinking about your learners in a lot of detail. And this is kind of our template that we follow for all of our modules. And one activity, for example, could look like this. So again, we're still thinking about the heaviness of the text and what the burden on users of this website might be. But we have kind of a simple activity. We split things into reading and reflecting or writing and reflecting. And these modules are all standalone. So people don't necessarily need any prior workshop experience to do this. And when will this be online? We're hoping September 25 for our modules that we currently built, but there might be more to come. And I think there are conversations happening all around CTLT that I've heard bits of about how to integrate certain resources. So this is an ongoing process. And yeah, thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, next up, we have Vantage College, Daniel Riccardi and Brian. Brian's not here. Okay.
So much. Hi, everyone. Brian gives his regrets, but he's, I believe he's on a film tour for a documentary that he made, and this is the third year that he's been in the UDL program, which has made it a little complicated to do that over the past few summers. So I'm Daniel Riccardi. We're at Vantage College. Brian Wilson is one of the curriculum manager, rather. I'm one of the academic English program faculty there. So my job is really to work teaching the language courses and the writing courses and communication courses at Vantage College, but I work closely with a whole variety of faculty from all kinds of departments around UBC. We're a relatively small unit, which is really interesting because given this is the third year, I'm the third academic English program faculty member that has participated in the program. So we're approaching 50% of us who have become acquainted with this cohort. So the climate's pretty different if you're not doing UDL within our program. I think that there's a lot of pressure, I think, to do that. So that's sort of a utopian thing that we have going on there. The other really cool thing is that we work with faculty from all around UBC. And so we're in program meetings with them and often bringing these kinds of things up. And I myself, of course, ended up here that way from benefiting from my other colleagues. And I had the benefit from hearing of the massively ambitious plans from my other two colleagues that ended up being quite large and ambitious in the end, but I was given a lot of advice to kind of like do something, especially since I was implementing it in September, that was achievable over the summer. The barrier challenge that I focused on was that with our student population, I mean, all students obviously can miss classes for various reasons, but we find sometimes some of our students have some additional challenges. Obviously, there's an increased chance of just burnout because they're working in an additional language, English. There's interesting mental health challenges that they have to navigate as international students who come here and are coming here for the first time, adapting to our post-secondary context, visa issues, all kinds of things like that. If there's a family emergency, they need to fly home. That's not as simple, obviously, when it's a 20-hour flight. Dense schedules, so they're grappling with their first-year courses in applied science or arts or science, but also a couple of language courses that I'm working with them on. So it's quite a workload. And in my course, there was really a lack of captions and transcripts, alt text, visual organizers. A lot of the assignment instructions were quite text heavy. So I tried to focus on all of that. Brian has been bugging me for years about using Canvas in a more thoughtful way and things like H5P, where it's not just a video and then a reflection question, but maybe actual questions that kind of arise that are interactive as things move along in the video. So I dabbled with this before, but never really had the time to do just all the technical know-how. It's not super complex, but it's time consuming. So I built two sort of 15-minute video modules that are interactive that have like maybe 10 questions or so built into them for the foundational concepts in my course. So there's a couple of, we don't just teach grammar, there's a lot more to it than that, but there are some foundational concepts that are very tricky for students, like clause structure, and the differences between academic writing and other types of writing. And we've got assessments, quizzes, and all kinds of chances for them to display their knowledge of that. But if they miss those foundational concepts, there's a lot of time in my office hours that I work with them on that. And they come with activities and they want to know all the right answers. Unfortunately, it's really just the motivated, engaged students, I think, who do that. And the ones who need it most don't often show up. So with these videos, it's formative, so there's no, grade associated with them. They can do it as much as they want. I try to make them sort of parse so that like every 2 minutes there's something for them to do, because I know it can be kind of tedious to just watch a long video. So it can be used in, for review, for introduction, and all kinds of aspects. So I tried to provide an option beyond the in-class lectures because of those sometimes missed classes. I included an accessibility statement for the actual module, which I thought was important. Of course, not everyone can even use this H5P interactive video, so I did my best to learn how to use captions using Kaltura, written transcripts, making sure all the questions had, were listed and had answers so that they could work with them if they needed to, if the video was a barrier in any way. The slides themselves, making them accessible by including alt text, working on the tables. There's still a little bit more work to do there, and trying to focus on the principles that we learned about slide design, like high contrast and using clear language in general. One other thing I'll do with actual student assignments is instead of having them just write a written reflection, which is what I usually do on what the writing assignment was and how it went and what they learned, I'd like to give them a chance to do like a 2-minute video screencast. There's a lot of writing assessment in this course, and giving them that kind of choice might be a first step in doing that. And it also has the advantage of maybe moving away from just sort of like written modes of assignments given generative AI, and sometimes the challenge of assessing whether, if a student, depending on the parameters you've set with what they can do with AI, has written the assignment or not. It can create a little more accountability there, I think, as well. I also had a lot of ambition to create graphic organizers for my assignment instructions, so they were less text heavy. I ran out of time to do that and found an amazing AI tool called MyLens AI. There's a paid and a free version. I really encourage you to check that out. You can kind of plunk a PDF in or a Word document, and it'll give you mind map, flowchart, bar graph, whatever you'd like. You have to tinker with it quite a bit. It's just a starting point, but I found that really useful. And a flexible deadline policy where students can choose 2 assignments and basically get a week extension without saying anything or giving any sort of excuses. So I think don't really have much time to cover all these aspects, so I'd just like to focus on the really last one. I think that going through this, what was the hardest for me was just figuring out, okay, captions, transcripts, simple, but at the same time I was using Adobe Premiere and kind of just Googling different ways of finding this and finding like the tools like Kaltura and just getting a workflow set up so that I can just do this for everything that I do now instead of side of the desk figuring it out last minute is something to make it more realistic to do in my everyday practice. And so I found that super helpful to kind of struggle with all that this summer as opposed to in the term. So a lot less intimidating and more routine, I think. So thanks as well for everybody, and thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thanks, Daniel. Okay, last but not least, from Faculty of Arts, we have Grace Trong and Michael Jarowski.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Mike Jarowski. I'm the educational technologist from Arts SIT who's been assisting the fabulous Grace here to make her course more accessible. Before I pass things off to her, I just wanted to give our heartfelt thanks, really just the collegiality and insights and support that all of the faculty and students and staff in this room have given us really made this entire process so much easier. So yeah, there you go.
Hi, friends. Really excited to share with you all the cool things we did and will continue to work on. So the course that I teach and I actually am also the course coordinator for is Psych 218, the notorious Psych 218. I'm pretty sure some of you have taken this course. And so it's a huge course. It's mandatory. We actually have over 1,100 students every year take it or retake it because it is part of the Psych Bachelor of Arts. It is really intimidating for a lot of students. So they're learning about statistical analysis, both conceptually, but they're also learning SPSS, which is the software program that a lot of research labs and industry sort of corporations use for data analysis. So that's new, kind of scary. It's a high stakes required course. They cannot get their degree without this course. They must do it. And part of what makes this kind of notorious is that folks are allowed to take this course up to 3 times so that they pass. So that I think gives some indication of what this course has been historically. And also, there are, for some students, some foundational knowledge gaps. So this is housed within the Faculty of Arts, and some students, for them, it's been a very long time since they took any sort of math or stats course. or they had barriers to learning it before, like maybe it was very recent, but it was like a real struggle. And there's just a lot of math anxiety for a lot of folks. So I said, let's do stuff. So we dabbled in all three principles of UDL. So for engagement, we thought about making our assignments more collaborative. So I noticed in the classroom, definitely during lecture, students really benefit from talking to each other. So we said, okay, why not for the assessments themselves, for the assignments themselves, why don't we enable some peer-to-peer collaboration? So we wanted to try that. We went big on representation, so we started making some scaffolding activities called projects, and to make them as UDL friendly as possible, they were short and they were captioned videos, and so that was a cool thing to do. Michael, who believes in AI far more than I do, had this idea that in addition to these videos that we created, we also provide students with some sort of like summary guides for these videos as well. And so they were generated by AI and then edited by myself. And then TAs play a huge role in the course. They provide a lot of the demonstrations about the different techniques that they're learning. And so because they're so crucial to the learning process in this course, we want to create resources that help TAs learn how to do things in a more UDL-friendly way as well. And Michael will talk more about that in just a moment. Lastly, for action and expression, we introduced more scaffolding for the assignments, so it can feel very large and intimidating. Can we break it down into smaller, more manageable pieces? And we're also in the process of developing some more flexible assessments. So if a student misses an assignment over the term because stuff is happening in their lives, we want something there for them. If they just want to show us that they've improved over the term, right? Maybe the first month went badly for various reasons, but they took it up, they really tried to learn it, and they want to show us that they have learned it, mastered the concepts, want to show improvement. We want that to be available for them as well. So the cool thing was that I actually taught the summer section of this course. We had the final exam this morning. That's why I wasn't here until 11. So no one cried. It was great. But I have data for you because we were able to implement some of these things during the summer term. I have some data to report. So I know this is very small text, but I'll give you the top point here. 97% of students did the scaffolding activity, the pre-check that we designed. And check this number. 81% of them reported that it did make things easier to do. Yes. I'm going to, if it's okay, I'm just going to skip down to the third point. So in terms of peer collaboration, because that's something we wanted to try, we tried that. For the first assignment, it went off very well. People were like, wow, okay, this really helped us get off the ground in terms of what these assignments are even like. After that, it went very poorly. Part of that could have been that it came at the end of a 3-hour class, because it was summer term, and they all just left. Instead of staying for their peer-to-peer collaboration time. So we're still going to work on that. It might have been confounded by the fact that it was a summer term 3-hour class period. That might have something to do with it.
Drinking your nature soup.
Yeah, the snack right at the end of class.
Okay, I will be very quick. We also, Grace had a nearsighted student who needed to interact with statistical tables like F tables and T tables. So we used vibe coding to create interactive HTML tables in really only a few hours. What would have taken maybe a week beforehand. And I just wanted to bring this up because there's a lot of invisible labor that goes into making UDL accessible materials, right? And I really do think that human in the loop kind of like AI integration might be one way that we can reduce the amount of labor on our poor faculty members, okay? So yeah, and finally, we are planning for to basically develop this TA training video. We've done an initial consult with UBC Studios with Michael Sider, thank you very much. And we will be creating basically a guide for TAs to create UDL videos for students or tutorials for students, and that'll train them and their students. Yeah.
Just like here.
Any last words? Sing a song?
No, I won't sing a song. Just because we were so inspired by all the things we learned, there was a couple of things we did that was beyond the scope of the original proposal. So all of my slides now have alt text. All the participation questions from class now have like a symbol that indicates the right answer instead of just bolding or putting it in red, which is what I did before. And there were 2 asynchronous lectures this past summer term, and I learned how to do captions and edit them. So cool stuff. Thank you for letting us be your last presentation and for staying for all of it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, thank you to all our presenters and participants. Thanks to Emily, Angela, Suna, as well as Jocelyn to make the presentation to be on track and go smoothly. We are a few minutes late, behind of our schedule. To close, I'm pleased to invite Jeff Miller, Associate Director at CTLT, to share his reflection and a look ahead for UDL at UBC.
Thank you, Afsana. So my first reflection is that I'm between you and this nice sunny day outside, so I will be very brief because we're a little bit over time. This is really remarkable. This has been a marvelous 3 hours to spend with you to see the accomplishments of so much work, so much energy, but so much commitment to making a difference for all of the people who are involved in teaching and learning. And, I just want to say that, it was wonderful to have Simon kind of publicly announce the fact that we have now a 4th cohort that we are going to begin to plan to offer next spring. But what's really, really happening now, which I see, and I hope some of you see too, is that we're now at a place where we see generational interaction. We're 3 cohorts in, and this year we had representatives from the 1st and 2nd presenting to you in the events. We have students who are at every single event presenting and engaging with the teams, providing feedback and consultation. We've got teams in all of the faculty units who now have capacity to engage these conversations and move forward. And I love this part, connect with colleagues across the university. So we've got a real network and a community effect growing. And we really plan to continue to expand this reach. We plan to consolidate the relationships that we've formed. We want to build this community. We want to tell the stories. We want you to tell the stories. You'll remember, for those of you who kind of filled out that crazy little nomination form, that we want you to be champions. We also want you to be advocates. I have great faith in your ability to do that because I hear it in every time you present your work and the challenges you undertake. So it's really wonderful. The other thing, I said it a minute ago, but I really want to stress that we are bringing a philosophy into the center of this, which is to honor, respect, and forward student voices. And I think that it's been really striking for all of us who are educators to think about the experience of our students. And it's been really courageous and important for the students to share it. So thank you all for the work that you've contributed and the difference that you are making to the experience that other students will have going forward. And as I say, I feel confident that leadership at UBC recognizes the value of this work. And I think that that's also work that all of you can carry on within your own faculties, because we have unevenness in terms of how people have access to resources and support, but you are some of the folks who are going to make a difference in your units, in your faculties. The other thing I wanted to mention is we've been listening, the planning team, to requests for people to keep getting together. It's lovely today that so many people have talked about enjoying the peer cohort, the collaborative moments that you've had this summer. We're going to plan a special event in 2026 where we're going to bring all of the cohorts together. We don't know what to call it yet. It might be a reunion tour. It might be some kind of something on the beach. It could be involved nature snacks. We'll figure it out, but we'll find a way to connect folks, because I think that through those connections, more work happens, more important cross connections happen that we want to continue to find a way to support. The other thing, I guess, is that we will continue to reach out to you. Many of you benefited this year, I think. Actually, I know because you told me, by hearing the experiences of past UDL Fellows teams. So guess what? You will be getting a message at some point. We'll be asking you for stories. We'll be asking for your involvement. But don't wait for us to contact you. Please contact us, because you can also have us help you, connect with you if you're doing a presentation or something within your unit. You can always kind of reach out to this community to ask for some additional people to share the love about UDL, I suppose. So there will be opportunities for you to stay involved, and but also be proactive if you want support from us in any way. This has taken a lot of effort by a lot of people, including the current cohort of folks. But for you can see on the screen that there's a long list of people's names from all across the university. If I could ask people who are here, who might recognize their own name at this point, to just quickly stand up, because you've put so much effort and no one's standing up. This is So thank you. My heartfelt thanks to all of the individuals who have given time and effort and commitment, as well as the units and the leadership in those units to make this possible to continue to do this work. I also mentioned earlier all the students who participated this year. I mean, it's really been impressive. I really am very, how can I put it? Well, I'm proud of you as students. I mean, it's just great to see you stepping forward and advocating for yourselves and taking these steps. And I think that you're setting the path for other people to think about in this room. How should we be engaging right at the center of this concern, the voices of the students, the experience of the students, because that is something that we really are committing to in this kind of program. Finally, I want to mention the support from the CTLT events team. We've had fine support throughout these sessions. And then also within the studio sessions, we had great support from the units that were hosting us in around campus. So again, this has been kind of a cross-team effort across the whole university. And of course, finally, I want to thank the support from UBC students through the TLEF Enhancement Fund, who have provided the funding to support the work of this program. And I wish you all a great day and the rest of the summer, which will last at least 5 or 6 more weeks before September starts. Thank you very much for coming.